Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. A little bit different kind of review for you today. You get to see the laptop first, and then we're going to concentrate on the screen that it's hooked into. So this is my HP notebook that I won for free from MDG Computers. And I wanted to get the review done now that I've got it all back and assembled. I've got 8 gigs of RAM in this thing now and a 1/2 terabyte hard drive. So I want to go over some things with you so that you understand this laptop in full. So there's no surprises for you if you do actually get into buying this thing. So let's focus on the screen that it's attached to so you can get a bigger picture. So you're going to have a program in this computer called HP Support Assistant. And this is where you're going to get driver updates for your version of Windows. And as Windows updates and they update drivers, you'll be able to get updates, of course, for critical drivers that you're going to need for the computer. Now, this computer from the factory comes with 4 gigabytes of RAM and a 120 gig hard drive. So there are some discrepancies in the specifications here that we need to also discuss, because the same laptop is made in a few different versions, okay? They all look the same, but there's some code differences that do actually make differences. Now, when I got a hold of HP for the RAM upgrade, because I wanted to know what was kicking in this thing, because at the time I didn't have the HP Assistant, they tell me it's 2666 RAM, which would be true probably in their US model or another model of the same laptop, but in this one it turns out with the HP Assistant it actually tells you it's 3200 megahertz RAM, not 2666. So don't call HP. Download the HP Assistant and you'll find out from there what RAM is actually in it, how many memory slots there are, and what size the RAM really is. So I had first gone with what they said, and I bought a 2666. And though the computer will recognize the total of the 12 gigs, because I bought an 8 gig chip at the time, I had a lot of crash issues, memory issues, that sort of thing, for blue screens of death. And when I fired up the Assistant, that's where I found out that the stock memory was actually 3200 megahertz. So although it can recognize it, it's going to cause you grief. So you have to use match speed RAM, okay? So I thought, you know what, I really don't need 12 gigs of RAM, and I could save some money. So I actually went back up to Amazon and found the exact same brand, same serial, model number, and everything of the stock memory chip that is actually in this thing, and at the right speed. So now I have 2 4 gig 3200 megahertz RAM sticks for a total of 8 gigs of RAM. The other discrepancy, they said this thing only went to 16 gigabytes of RAM total. Turns out that it actually can go to, it's either 32 or 64. I haven't figured out how to get back into the main part of this program to get that, but it's either 32 or 64. Either way, they gave me the wrong information. So I don't see a need for even my purposes with this laptop to exceed beyond 8 gigabytes of RAM. I do have now 7 gigabytes of RAM free for programs, where with the last version Windows build, that version actually used 3 gigs of RAM to itself, where this new 64-bit version, 19043.1052, actually only uses 1 gigabyte of actual RAM, so you'll have 3 gigs free. So that'll give you a performance increase, because now you're only using 1 gig of RAM for the OS instead of 3 gigs. So it'll be interesting with Windows 11 when it gets released this fall, how much RAM it actually sucks back, because I'm going to keep this thing up to date. Even though Windows 10 will be supported for a few more years yet, they've made it as an option, but I'm going to take the option ahead of time, because I just want to keep everything up to date. And I'm curious to see how much more RAM is going to get sucked. Not only that, hard drive space that we're going to lose. So, the 120 gig hard drive, even with a standard Windows install, you're going to lose a lot of your hard drive space. Now, they do put these computers from the factory into what's called S mode. Now, what that does for Windows 10 in S mode is it forbids you to install or use any kind of application programs that you already may have. So you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to disable S mode to go to full Windows 10 mode. then you'll be able to run your applications and go to the Microsoft Store for apps there. Otherwise, in S mode, you are stuck with the Microsoft Store for app-only usage, okay? So no applications, okay? Which is kind of stupid. But I guess the computer actually runs pretty good in S mode, but I'd rather have a full Windows OS, even though it's kind of a bit of a wussy laptop. As part of the specs, continuing on, we have a 1.2 gigahertz dual-core processor that maxes out at 3.4 gigahertz on the Turbo Boost side. Now, you can actually go into your power preference settings, okay, and set the computer up to run everything max full tilt. So, no waiting times, no idling down the hard drive. Even though it's not a moving hard drive anyways, it can still put it in idle mode, even though it's a, well, in this case I've upgraded from a SSD to a NVMe. The SSD is actually a stick drive SSD. It's a B&M key drive. So I bought an external case for it. So the 120 gig is now in here. But I replaced it with an NVMe because the board can support either SSD regular drives, B&M, or the standard, I believe it's the M key, is what they use for NVMe. Anyways, this drive was only rated at about 5-something megabits per second, like 500 and something. So I bought a 2000 megabit per second NVMe drive, which is like far faster. I mean, you get to turn the power on and it's ready to boot, you know, like right into your password screen to log in. So pretty fast and snappy, even without cranking the processor. But your minimum and maximum processor state area in those advanced settings, that's where you want them both at 100% on battery or plugged in. And yes, you're going to chew up a lot more battery power when you're on battery, but you're going to get peak performance out of the computer all the time. And no, you will not burn out your processor faster by running at full bore all the time. However, programs generally will only access as much processor as they need, okay? But they do run much better and smoother if you're maxed out on your processor. So if you're leaving it in power savings mode from default, which most people do because they don't know how to do this stuff in the computer, you're going to find this thing can be very sluggy in a lot of areas if the program's not demanding it. So if you're working with even an old version of Movie Maker, which I am on my PCs because I don't like the new stuff, you know, you're going to find that Movie Maker will perform much better and faster if you have the processors cranked to the hilt, whereas if you leave it at default, the computer is going to be a lot more sluggier for trying to even process a video into the program. So just a couple of little ideal tips for you. Moving on to the specs, we have Intel Ultra HD graphics at 1366 by 768 on the built-in display with a 60 Hz refresh rate. I'm running a 75 Hz refresh rate, 1920 by 1080p IPS panel display on the outside. We have 4 gigabytes of graphics memory, which is actually quite surprising that we have this much graphic memory. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, in a little laptop, they put a 4 gig of graphics? That's crazy. So it should be good for playing some games as long as the game doesn't really over-demand, like wanting a quad-core chip, for example. But at least you got dual-core, so you should be able to run even a quad-core requirement game on a dual-core like this, if you max out the processors all the time. At least in medium settings, you should be fine. I am going to find that out, so there will be a final review on this thing once I really put it through some thorough beatings. We have standard USB audio systems, display audio. We have Realtek high definition audio. The sound quality of this thing with built-in speakers versus external, night and day, of course, obviously. That sort of thing. But in this program, this is where you're going to get all the support, troubleshooting, and fixes that'll actually fix things if they're fixable, that sort of thing. Warranty services to find out where your warranty is. Your storage as well tells me I got a 0.5 terabyte. Basically, formatted size of a 0.5 terabyte drive on this computer is going to be 465.15 gigs available out of 500 gigs. Okay, and I still have 398 gigs free. Again, the 120 gig hard drive that comes with it is garbage. It's too small. You're going to run out of space faster than you can shake a stick at it. And with that, this newest version of Windows, it's a space hog. So you're definitely going to want to upgrade the hard drive and your RAM. And the fact that you have 2 memory slots also means you do not have onboard soldered in memory, which is nice. So you have the ability to swap out your RAM chips to whatever you need to put in there. Just keep in mind, in this laptop, you would have to be 3200 megahertz. Again, you have to check the HP Assistant on your HP laptop to find out what your RAM speed is and only order that RAM speed for that computer. And it is DDR4 RAM in this laptop. Now I did talk with HP too, because I told them, I says, this is a pretty piss poor laptop for the money. This is a $450 laptop in Canada, and it's a rip-off with 4 gigs of RAM and 120 gig hard drive. That's kind of like the old MacBook Airs prior to 2020, which now come with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs. At least that's an improvement, right? But even at that, I mean, depending on what you're doing, depends on how much extra space you really need, right? So, now for surfing the internet, this thing is fantastic. The built-in Wi-Fi card in this will actually max out on the 5 gigahertz band connection, not 5G, but 5 gigahertz. So you have 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi and 5 gigahertz. It maxes out to 150 megabits per second. It's as fast as the internal card can go. So if your internet connection is faster than what the fastest connection rate of this thing is, you're not going to see any advantages there because it can't draw in more than what the card can handle at the max output rating. And it puts out about half that at 2.4 gigahertz and a little slower than that if you're connecting to, in my case, an iPad for internet, because I use my iPad or I use my Rocket Hub. Either way, you know, I know what my connection speeds are. Now, I wanted to give you a little bit of a sample of sound quality on this thing. So let's see what we got here. Because I only want to be able to, I can only play what I've done myself. Yeah, I got a River of Life rock version. This is my arrangement. So we're going to play it first through the Mackie CR5 speaker so you can hear what it's like with external speakers that are good speakers. I got a river of life flowing out of me. I probably need a better example of this. That recording, you know, I tell you, it's when you change to different reference monitors, you hear things that you didn't hear before, and you're like, oh, I think I need to redo that. Oh, this is a good one. This is one I wrote, All Creation. All creation. There's a good example. All creation. So we're going to go to the sound app. All creation has it for so this is the built-in speakers on the laptop now. So the sound, this is also 100% jacked volume as well on the internal speakers. It's not bad, and the sound quality is pretty decent. Personally, I like it better on the externals. So, it's got half-decent sound. Now, as far as keyboard and mouse, I always use external keyboards and mice on laptops because I don't generally use a laptop as a laptop except when I want to sit on the couch and do something, or if I'm going to go out somewhere where I need my laptop. I'm not carrying extra equipment. I just want to use the built-in keyboard and trackpad. So, my laptops in history, any laptop I've ever owned, has had minimalistic wear and tear on the keyboards or the trackpads, which also helps me retain good resale value. Plus I keep my stuff in cherry condition too, which helps. However, the keyboard on this thing is very nice to type on. The trackpad is very good and accurate. It's not laggy or anything. You have your usual left and right clicking of the buttons in the bottom corners for having your dual button system there. Works really well, so pretty happy. Overall picture quality of the built-in screen is very good, though it is angle dependent for not only your best color reproduction on your visual, but also to be able to legibly read stuff. It's kind of got one of those screens where it's definitely very angle dependent. And that's on a lot of laptops out on the market, so it's nothing new that we've seen or anything. It's just, you know, it's also not a very expensive laptop, right? So they're not going to put a top-end screen on a cheap laptop, obviously. I like the fact that even though the main body shell of the laptop is silver, which I'm not a real silver fan, at least the front of the keyboard and the top is actually black, which is nice. I do like that. Now, there are other specs, too, that I read on this laptop where it said it had a light-up keypad, which turns out it doesn't. So that's on different versions of the exact same laptop. So this is why you need to actually make use of downloading the Windows Support Assistant program so that you know exactly what you have under the hood. Reading the box also really helps too, but you got to know what's under the hood. And that really makes a difference for upgrading as well. There's also a bay inside here that would support a standard, regular, everyday SSD 2.5-inch sized platform drive. So you could put that in there as well. You would have to purchase the cables. The connections are on the motherboard, but the cables do not come with. This is why they use the NVMe type stick type drives, or in this case a standard SSD BM key drive, which looks exactly the same, except it's got basically 3 key positions instead of 2, like an NVMe only has the 2, the tiny one and the wide one. So, and it is nice that this laptop does support NVMe or standard SSD. That is fantastic. So I was quite happy to go NVMe, slam it in, away I go, I'm done. And it's also faster than any standard SSD, because every SSD on the market that I've seen so far, that I've read about, I have not seen one that actually goes past the up to rating of 560 megabits per second on the read speed, and the write is always a little slower anyway. I put in a 2000 megabit per second read and write capable NVMe stick, and it works quite fantastic, and wow, what a difference even from SSD normal stuff. Just amazing. So even the stick drives that are SSD standard B and M key, they are slow just like the 2.5-inch bladdered ones, but still quite fast either way. It is a massive difference from mechanical drives. So I'm actually glad that HP at least has not put a mechanical drive in this thing, because they suck, they slow you down. Even with a fast computer, my wife and I both have, well, she still has her Lenovo 17-inch. They came with 5400 RPM mechanical drives. Hers still has it. And it's very slow for boot times. It's slow for accessing, slow for main loading, once it gets to the desktop and does the stuff. I put an SSD in mine prior to selling it. I put it back to the mechanical one when I did sell it because it was a terabyte. But, while I had an SSD in it, even though it was a small 250 gig one, that thing was so fast. It was nuts, and especially like getting right to the desktop and just getting into doing stuff. SSD drives and NVMe rule, okay? Especially NVMe if you can use them. So, like I said, I use an old version of Movie Maker, which many of you will be familiar with. We were able to download the last of them on the internet before they were totally ripped off the net. So it's a non-internet install version. And I like to use this program even on my PC desktop because it works for what I need it for. It's quick and dirty. If I want to do anything sophisticated and fancy, that's why I have a Mac for. And I have DaVinci for it, as well as iMovie and whatnot. Now, for audio recording, I use Audacity right now on this thing, and it actually works pretty good. The hard part on this is getting your mix balanced first. You have to work out that with your levels. So you're going to have to do independent tracking and get your levels figured out first. And then you can all go and record it in one track, or you can do single multi-tracks and just stack your tracks as you go. Pretty cool program though. It's somewhat competitive to Adobe Audition 1.5, which I still have. Still runs even on Windows 10, which is amazing. This is a good suitable laptop if you have the processors cranked all the time. Then you won't have any issues with recording audio, whether it's just talking or doing music. You can do an awful lot. Now that's with basic programs. As far as using programs like Pro Tools and that, I think you might want a little bit more of a raunchier laptop for horsepower. So you probably wouldn't want this laptop for running those higher end programs. And same as 4K editing, you're not going to be doing that very well at all on this laptop. Okay, so you're going to need a proper laptop for 4K editing and stuff. But otherwise, if you're typing, you're surfing the internet, you're watching YouTube videos, you're streaming Netflix on your laptop, you're doing, stuff like I do on my laptop, it's a fantastic computer, okay? Now, out of the gate, as a stock configuration, this laptop gets a 3 out of 5, okay? Now that it's got 8 gigs of RAM and a half a terabyte of hard drive space in it, I'll push that to a 4 out of 5. But no further than that, that's for sure. Even when I do my final review, I highly doubt we're going to see me going anywhere beyond the 4, but we might, just because I am going to be testing some games on this thing, because everybody wants even a cheap gaming solution, even for maybe some older games. And one of the older games I have that can be very intensive on graphics and on processor is actually Far Cry, okay, and the original Far Cry. I have all the new versions of Far Cry on my PlayStation 4. But I still love playing the original Far Cry, even though I've beaten it like 500 times now. And I'm still playing it. I want to see what it's like on here, as well as Need for Speed Undercover. Because once you jack all the graphics up on it, it gets to be pretty demanding. So we'll see how this laptop fares with those programs. And when we do the final review, we'll let you know how it worked out in gaming world with those type of games. Because some of you, like me, are a little nostalgic when it comes to older games. We still want to be able to play them if we can. So that's a big thing. Other than that, the built-in camera is a 720p camera. And I think I can switch between the two of them here. Okay, so this is our 1080p Logitech camera that I have on the screen. And it's very nice, and the audio is beautiful. So I can sit here, play guitar, and actually record something live for you guys. And the mics are fantastic on that camera. Now if we go and we flip over, this is called front-facing camera. Now if I'm correct, this should be, and yeah, it is, this is our built-in camera, 720p at 30 frames per second. This is the one neat thing about running an external and the internal camera. Okay, so, and to show you that this is actually the internal camera, there's my finger over the laptop screen. Okay, for its camera, right? So if we switch to the other camera, which is our 1080p, if I do the same thing, nothing happens. I go up here though, and voila. So that's your evidential proof there. Okay, so, because I know you can't see the laptop right now. Okay. And of course we're 2.1 megapixel 1920 by 1080 for our photo resolution. We're at 1080p 16:9 at 30 frames per second, but we have all of these choices that we can do as well. Okay, so if you want to save on drive space, just switch it over to the 720p. Okay, if you want to do that, so you can actually downgrade. But I like the 2 megapixel up to 1080. It's a lot better. You can get down here, you can go 0.9 megapixel. You actually make things a little bit worse at 720p. So your 1080 is your top, and that's probably what I'd be using for that. But then when we go into the internal camera here, we get 720 at 30 frames per second. It doesn't tell us well, it tells us pixel rate of photo quality there. But we don't get the pixel rating here. And I don't think we got the pixel rating on the other one either. No, actually we didn't get the pixel rating for the video side, just for the picture side. But 60 Hertz flicker resolution on the 1080, and on our internal camera, we're also at 60 Hertz for the video, but we can drop down to 50. Now the screen I'm using, of course, is 75 Hertz, and we're running at 75 Hertz at 1920 by 1080 resolution for the external screen, which is all HDMI. So the built-in camera and the built-in array mics are fine for doing like video chats and stuff, and when you're talking, the mics are fine, they pick up great. But when it comes to music-wise, if you're trying to put up a Facebook video on a guitar group or a keyboard group, I would not recommend using the internal microphones. In fact, I would go with the internal camera, which would be fine, but then an external microphone source would be your best bet, okay? Or in this case, I've got a Logitech camera that both has great microphones, and of course we're up to 1080p resolution. Bigger bonus there. So we can also shut the lid down on this, and you'll watch what happens here. Let me just go to display settings right now. So we are actually on both screens at 1366 by 768. Okay, now if I close the lid on my laptop, now we're at 1920 by 1080. Okay, so you're going to get better resolution with the lid closed on your laptop when you're running an external display. Okay, now things are even tighter, nicer picture too. Okay, so now if we go back up into our camera app once again, now we're only going to, of course, be able to access the external camera, because the internal is going to give us a blank screen because the lid is closed. Okay, it's kind of neat how it thinks it's a front and basically a USB difference. It's kind of neat. So, but the camera picture quality on the 1080 is really nice and sharp. I really like this. Like, that's pretty good. You know, and all cameras are light dependent too. So if I had even better lighting, we'd have an even more vibrant, richer, cleaner picture too. So that's where I'm at with this laptop for now. Like I said, I want to do some hardcore testing with this thing, with video games, see how it fares. But so far, I got to tell you, with 8 gigs of RAM and a half a terabyte, best thing I ever did. This thing really rocks out nice now. And of course, like I said, with the power settings, don't allow things to hibernate, don't allow the hard drive to spin down, don't allow anything to go to sleep or have lack of performance. Jack it to the hilt. You're not really going to chew up that much more battery power when you're running everything full out on battery and plugged in mode, the same. Your battery's not going to take that much more of a hit. I mean, if anything, you'll see probably about an hour difference in running time, maybe. You know, and you need all the speed you can get for doing stuff, you know. So I was joking with my buddy actually about this thing. I said, you know, this is basically nothing more than a MacBook Air, older version of course, but now it would be like a MacBook Air 2020, except for the fact it comes with a 256 and I've got a 500 in here. But it's basically a MacBook Air, but running Windows 10, you know, for 3 times less money. So kind of think of it that way. But if you're a Mac fan, you buy a Mac, right? So, you know, even I'm going to buy into another Mac Air, but I want the M1 series chip, and that's going to be my replacement computer completely for my iMac when the time comes, which, you know, it may be even some other chip too by then, because I got at least another 2 years of support out of Apple on my iMac, so I'm going to keep this sucker running as long as I can. But should it pass away early from, you know, whatever, then I'll replace it sooner, because I do have to have a Mac, preferably. I do prefer the Mac, especially for doing all my in-studio work, because it is the industry standard, is done on the Mac to have it done right. And I love GarageBand. It's going to be very hard to transition away from GarageBand, especially considering it is so much more powerful for a free program that comes with every Mac and iOS device. You know, it's like free. It's like great. It's a fantastic, powerful program too. Anyways, enough said. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think about this HP laptop. I kind of like it, you know. I mean, and it's not because I got it for free. You know, it's the simple fact that I do like it. It does work. It does do what I need to do. And the biggest bonus is, yeah, it didn't cost me anything, but that doesn't affect my review rating. Okay? Even if I would have spent the $450, you'd get the same answers out of me. Exactly the same answers. Alright? So, guess we'll catch you guys in the next video, which I'm not sure what I'm going to do next, but we'll figure something out, I'm sure. I do have some more music gear videos coming, hopefully this week if my other stuff comes in that I ordered from Long and McQuaid. But in the meantime, that's our tech stuff for today. See ya!